Hi everyone! Today I'm so excited to share this new tutorial for the Mini Gouache Painting series that we've been doing on this channel, and this time we have some springy forest and flower illustrations using lots of these muted blue-green tones. I'm using my Etchr's Lab B5 size watercolor sketchbook, but any thicker paper will work with gouache. So I found an empty page and then decided to start by lining the edges with some washi tape to get those satisfying clean borders. But you could easily skip this step and just paint a loose rectangle or circle shape for the background. Here are all the colors we'll be using today, and as always, all the tools I'm using are linked to the description, though it really doesn't matter if you don't have the exact same paints or colors that I'm using. If you have a black and white and some basic primary colors, you'll pretty much be able to mix any other color out of them, but in this case, having a greenish blue and a lighter green and maybe a muted yellow shade ready just takes those extra mixing steps out of the process. But now we're gonna jump right into the first painting, which is inspired by this beautiful picture I found, and I wanted to find a way to make it very simple to paint just in a few steps. So we are starting by creating an overall background layer that will help us visualize the horizon and the lighting in this picture a little bit. I started by mixing this light grayish mist green shade, and we are starting to apply this to the top half of the painting. However, I did want this middle part to be slightly lighter, so I added some more white to the mixture and created this light gradient effect. We're gonna paint on top of all of this, so the transitions between different colors don't need to be perfect, so please don't worry yourself too much with this step. Then I added some layers also to the lower ground part, and I just basically used the previous color we had as a base and then just added more yellow to it to create this yellowish green color. Since the overall tone in this picture will be very misty and greenish, I think it's a great idea to mix all these colors together to just see what happens and to have a similar base under all the colors, which will help them to melt together very nicely in the finished painting and create that misty appearance. But anyway, after these first layers, I blended these ground colors together just a little bit by cleaning my brush from the excess paint and then just smudging and tapping on the edges a little bit. But after that, we are leaving the crown part alone for a while and work on the upper part first. I started by adding some light texture and smudges to the background here because we want the background to have something going on. Any of this won't show much in the final image, but I think that adding something like this to the background will create some shadows and appearances of faraway trees and leaves, which is exactly what we want to make the forest look fuller. But after that, it's time for the bravery part of this painting. So we are now painting the dark tree trunks in the background. Again, I mixed some of the previous blue and green shades into this brown to make the color tone closer to the rest of the painting. You can also change the intensity of the color a little bit, so I think the further away the trees are in your picture, the lighter they usually appear. The color should also be lighter in this highlighted part in the middle because this is the place where most of the light in this picture is coming, so it's kind of gonna wash out the color of the trees and branches as well. And then lastly, I added this one large dark tree trunk right in the middle to draw most of the attention in this picture and to add some contrast as well. If you want, you could add some details to these tree trunks to make them look maybe a little bit more realistic, but since I wanted to keep this image a little bit quicker and easier, I decided to skip doing that this time. But after you're happy with the amount of tree trunks in your picture, then we are gonna paint just a few lighter branches around the top part. These will also be mostly covered with the leaves, so no need to make them too perfect. But then for the leaves, I decided to mix some of the first brighter colors in this picture. So I used the light green and yellow shades to start adding a bit more color, first to the top part and then to the ground. I was using these small tapping motions throughout this painting, and I think it's a pretty good rule to switch to a smaller brush whenever you're painting with a very high contrast color. So here in the ground, this yellow shade stands out a lot from the background, and then we're starting to add this white shade which shows up even more. So the small brush will make these details more crisp. So that's why I think a detailing brush like this is a very useful brush to have in your collection. I continue to lighten the center part in the sky as well, because I think the background color I applied in the beginning wasn't light enough, so I had to spend some time here adding these lighter shades all over to create a little bit stronger light effect. And then after that, we're continuing doing the same thing for the rest of the painting. So I kept switching between these white, green and blue shades and just kept tapping details to the whole area. This step is a little bit tedious, but if you spend your time with it, I think it will look very beautiful in the end. I added some more defined leaf shapes just to the lowest front part of the picture, but otherwise all the rest of the details are created by tapping. But after you're happy with all your colors and the amount of details, that's finally it for the first painting. I wanted nothing more than to rip the tapes around the edges to see how everything looked like, but we still have the other painting to go, which will be a little bit faster, and we are using only the same colors we already have in the palette, except for the foil paint that we're gonna add in the end. But let's finish the other parts first. It took me some time to find a background color I was happy with, so you'll see me repainting this same area a few times. I also wanted the edges to be slightly darker than the middle. In the end, there's not that much difference here because I painted over this area a few times, but I do think that this painting could benefit from some texture and variation in the background. Anyway, after the background is somewhat dried, I used the dark brown mixture we already had in the palette and started to paint these light branches all over the picture. I know this might feel like a very intimidating step to do right at the beginning when there's nothing else on the canvas, but trust me, we are again gonna cover most of this with the flowers. So if there's any part that you don't like or where your brush maybe slipped a little bit, we can cover that up. So after the branches, we are starting to paint the flowers, and I started with this color that looks very light, but it's actually quite a lot darker than a pure white. So I think mixing something that's between a white and the background shade is a really good idea. We want to be able to paint with white on top of this first color, so if it's too light from the beginning, the rest of the details won't really show up against it. And I wasn't going for any specific shapes here, and I also used this bigger brush to stop myself from trying to make this step too detailed. We are really just trying to add some lighter shapes and dots here, and also adding some singular dots to the background is a good idea as well. After this, it's time to paint the leaves, which is also a very straightforward step. There's actually nothing too difficult in this second painting. All the shapes are very simple and quick to paint, and I think the end result is still so beautiful. So something like this would be a great idea for a greeting card or just some simple painting practice. Anyway, I wanted to add a few leaves here and there that had this more yellowish shade, just to add a tiny bit of color to this painting. But after that, we are ready for the most important step, which is painting the more detailed flower shapes. So here I used straight white and went for these 4 round petal flowers that we are painting directly on top of the first flower layer. So you can see how adding only a few of these more defined shapes will change the look of the whole painting and make these flower groups come to life. So I kept doing this for the whole area, and I think the layers underneath just create the most beautiful dimension to these flowers. After doing this, you could just leave the painting here and call it a day, or you could add some sort of final detail here. I was first planning to paint a small bird sitting on one of these branches, but I was too scared to mess it up for this video since I already had finished the first painting and didn't want to redo everything. So instead, I went with this foil paint and created this foiled circle here, and also added a few foiled leaves mixed with the rest. I think this champagne gold shade went perfectly with the rest of the colors in these two paintings, and in the end, I really liked the end result. So now we can finally rip out the washi tapes from the edges, which felt extra satisfying after completing both of these paintings. And after a few quick fixes, we are done with the tutorial. I really hope you got some new ideas from these paintings, and as always, you could absolutely change the main color here and try out both of these pictures with a different color palette. If you decided to try them out, let me know how it went for you, and if this was your first time on this channel, please consider subscribing for more art and journaling content in the future. But that's it for this time. I hope you're having an amazing day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye bye!